Welcome to Crest in partnership with Elusive. Producer Dodd here, and I've just finished cutting together an amazing guest. Stand by for Tom and Rhino's chat with one of the defining characters in the quest to surf and then conquer the unridden realm. Buzzy Kerbox has told us some incredible tales here, and I have to say, what a really, really nice guy he was too, so this is well worth the listen. Just before we start though, we'd like to thank everybody who responded to our emergency results show from the Welsh Nationals. It definitely makes us think that we should be doing this sort of thing more in future, especially when events like the Wilkinson Sword will be back on soon and the British also taking place in Wales next year. On that note, if you've got ideas for how we can engage with and cover the surfing communities we represent, then please get in touch. We love an email or a DM for any reason. Remind us of how to do that at the end of the show. Anyway, here it is. The penultimate of our planned interviews for this year, the legend that is Buzzy Kerbox.
He's the last but one guest of the season, and put quite simply, he is a man who rides mountains.
With both a competitive shortboard track record and involvement in some of the most extreme moments the sport has ever seen, Buzzy Kerbox is someone whose tale stands out in world surfing.
Coming up in the next hour, we meet one of the pioneers of the unridden realm. Welcome to Crest, Buzzy.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, I absolutely echo that. Welcome indeed to Crest in partnership with Elusive, Buzzy. It is an honour to have you on.
My pleasure.
Small world then, Buzzy. Let's get the Welsh connections out the way here. So my dad rings me up and he says that he's just met you because you've been staying at Tom Craig's place in California.
Yep.
And then when Wales gets mentioned in a conversation over there, it's not only then that Tom Craig mentions that he thinks his son Cody won an event here in the 90s. You know Cody as well, I presume, if you've been.
I haven't met him. I know of him, but I haven't met him personally.
Okay. Well, yeah. So it turns out that Tom Craig's son, not only did he win an event over here when they were professional longboarders at the time, but he and Jay Moriarty on that same trip actually came and surfed the local point break here, and it was on my birthday, and it was one of the best days ever with a Welsh legend, Guts Griffiths. And I can remember that session like it was yesterday. But it was promoting a book that had you in California at the time, yeah? Making Waves, right?
Yes. Yeah, I wrote a book called Making Waves, sort of my life story as it weaves through the evolution of surfing. And it came out at the end of 19. I was going to do a book tour in 20, and I pushed it back and got to it this year.
Yeah, sensible decision. Good trip. You go to quite a few places across California.
I went to a lot of places. I had a great time. I kept updated on my Instagram and had quite a following of some of my antics along the way. And that was really fun. I had a great time.
Looked like a really good road trip that did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones, I think, that California in summertime. Yeah. So what gave you the idea for putting that book together in the first place, Buzzy?
Well, I was born in Indianapolis, and I moved to Hawaii when I was 10, and worked my way through to become a champion surfer. And I just thought that was an interesting story. Yeah. But then as time went on, it got more interesting. I started modeling for Ralph Lauren and started toe-in surfing. So I don't know, in the back of my mind, I always thought it was an interesting story that someday I would write a book. And while I was in college, I took a writing class, and the teacher said, keep a journal. So I kept a journal, and in that journal, I'd write stuff every day, and I'd clip in postcards and bus tickets or whatever, concert tickets or whatever, and kept a diary journal of all the highlights of my heyday years. And so I went back at that, and all the pictures, I've always taken pictures, and other people have taken pictures of me. And I thought, someday I'm going to write a book. And my wife said, you keep talking about someday you're going to write it, so why don't you just do it? So I got down to brass tacks and made it happen. It took a lot longer. It was a lot harder than I expected.
It did take a while, did it?
Yeah. Ended up taking 3 years. I had to reach out to every photographer to get permission to use pictures and get every, my editor was very crazed about getting every detail right, every date, every name, every spelling, everything. So it meticulously came together, and then we scrutinized over every page, because it's not just like writing. That every page has pictures and it's very sort of artsy book.
Yeah, layout and things like that being very important. That, do you know what, Buzzy? Having worked around surf books for a long time, I actually don't think 3 years is that long a time to put together the kind of project that you've put together. Because I mean, the amount of photography in that book, you know, I think
Have you seen the book? Have you guys seen it?
Yeah. I think to be able to get that stuff together, to curate it in the way that you guys have done, there's some incredible pictures in there, and you know, if you've been putting all the permissions together, you know, I think to do that in 3 years, that's pretty good going. I noticed as well through your website that the first 2 reviewers of the book, I loved this, were Kai Lenny and Ralph Lauren, which kind of pretty much sums up your career, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much does. Yeah, I figure whose words would be better than those guys, you know, talking about my book. So I threw that in right off the bat.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. But Buzzy, we'll talk a little bit more about balancing your surfing and modelling career a little bit later on in the show. But first, I'd really like to ask you, what was it that attracted you to like the bigger surf, the bigger stuff in the first place? Was it always something that you had an appetite for, or did you start surfing more of as a fun activity and then discover the adrenaline bit down the other end of the line?
Well, for me, I started out as a surfer and competitive surfer, and a lot of the contests weren't in giant waves. And so I was a performance surfer. I like Sunset Pipeline. When Waimea got big, it was pretty much a big drop and straight out in front of the white water. Wasn't much of a performance wave. So I would slip over to Honolulu Bay, and it'd be like, you know, 6 to 8 feet and perfect with barrels. So I was never a big wave guy. And it just, when Laird and I started towing with the Zodiac, we were riding, you know, backyards, and it was 12 to 15. It wasn't massive. It wasn't like, oh, we're going out to ride the giantest surf that ever existed. We were just out there to catch these waves that were an unutilized resource on the second reef. Mm-hmm. But as we got better with our technique and Laird's hunger for bigger and bigger surf, as bigger swells came, then I had to up my game and try to keep up with my partner and ride bigger and bigger waves. So I was never an adrenaline junkie. It wasn't like a rush. I just want the gnarliest one. It was just as they got bigger and our equipment got better, we were able to ride big waves with high degree of performance, and that was what was exciting to me.
Wow.
That's an incredible story. That sort of movement into the bigger surf, I guess, is how it really would happen, rather than you just jumping into it full force. When
your buddy is Laird Hamilton, you know, you just I should have known I was going to get into some big shit.
Yeah.
But before all that, Buzzy, you were a pretty formidable competitor before developing your big wave sort of aspect of your surfing career, weren't you? You had a huge win at the World Cup at Sunset in '78, wasn't that right?
It was at Sunset Beach, yeah.
Yeah. And that remains to be, to this day, one of the most important events on the tour. Was it a big sort of event in your sort of competitive career for you? Yeah,
at that point, I'd been on the world tour for 2 years. And I think coming into Hawaii, coming into that last event, I was 10th in the world on the ranking. And that was, you know, I've been doing the world tour a few years and making finals and getting fourths and fifths. And my dad just kept telling me, you've got to win one. You've got to win one. So I focused on the World Cup. I put that in my brain. I dreamt it. I trained for it. I focused. I just wanted that contest more than anything in the world. I figure if I'm going to win one, I might as well win the biggest one there is. So I put all my effort and focus on that. And I mean, really, my dad was my big supporter. Not everybody else, was a big supporter of me. I was a bit of a dark horse, and Hawaii, there was Dane and Michael Ho and Bertelman and these guys that got a lot more of a local push than I did. Not that I didn't get some, but it wasn't, I wasn't the local favorite kid. So I had my dad supporting me and pushing me, and I set that goal, and I knew that, I wasn't the best surfer in the world, but I just set my mind to it and focused on it and worked hard. And the day of the contest, everything just went my way. Like
it always does in competitions. It's a bit of sometimes not the best surfer who wins, but somebody who's determined and has got that drive, isn't it?
See, back then too, it was different. There was more of an opportunity for somebody like me because it was based on 3 and sometimes 4 waves in a heat. So you could, by being, I realized early that being a good competitive surfer, you had to be a good paddler. So I started paddle training and doing paddle races and became one of the fastest paddlers in the world as help to do better competitively. And, a day, you get a day at sunset and you got to paddle way out and go heat after heat. Your fitness is important and your paddling is important. And it's, 3 rides. And I don't know if I didn't necessarily surf, I wasn't a better surfer than Ian, but in the final, it just came together and I made it happen and was able to win. And that was like a David and Goliath story. It was like, kind of the underdog comes through the biggest event.
But the guy who wins, that's the only fact that matters at the end of the day, though, then, isn't it?
Yeah. And that competitive edge that you had back then, is that still with you today? Do you follow competitive surfing, pro surfing quite keenly today, like we all do?
Yeah, I grew up with 2 older brothers, so I think that was probably the underlying factor that made me grow up competitive, trying to compete with my older brothers. And so I've always been fiercely competitive, and we've had masters events and still do stuff, but I still love to watch surfing. I just watched the WSL finals day at Trestles, and that was amazing. I watch every ride, and it's just, I'm blown away how at the talent that these guys have now. Medina, going in, I didn't think anybody was going to be able to beat him, but he put on a show that was just out of this world.
It's incredible.
I mean, he's so good in the air and all those maneuvers, but his on the wave surfing too is, his tube riding, his carves, his, everything he does is amazing.
The athleticism of it as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Strength,
just a super talent. Everybody else, I mean, there's so many other great surfers, but Medina just was unstoppable. I didn't think anybody'd be able to stop him, and nobody came close.
Yeah, I mean, this week, Buzzy, those guys certainly really have put on a show, and it was a really watchable spectacle. But obviously, things have changed now, and we've seen the tours finished here in California instead of Hawaii. What's your thoughts on that? Would you prefer to see the tour end at the end of the year in December in Pipe?
That's how it always was. And I like that. I like that it was at Pipeline. I did like the format of the top 5 guys going at it for the world title. I thought that was an exciting format. Would that have been more exciting at Pipeline at the end of the year? Probably. Yeah. But, with COVID and all the issues and permits and stuff, it's they're dealing with what they can.
And it's the best of a bad situation.
Definitely in a perfect world, that day would have happened at Pipeline.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it was a great week and it was a great spectacle. But, Buzzy, surfing is a sport which is, as we know, changes at a very rapid pace compared to other sports. And you've been able to influence some of those key turning points. And in fact, you're widely credited with coming up with the idea of towing into waves along with lead, as you mentioned earlier. How did that relationship with lead come about?
I knew Laird as a little kid. He used to, him and his dad, Bill Hamilton, lived at Pipeline behind Jerry's house. There was a little house where they lived. So I knew him as a little kid on the beach. And then I didn't see him for years. And then we hit it off on a GQ shoot we were doing here in Hawaii. Bruce Weber was doing it. Sean Thompson was there, Laird and myself. And at that time, we sort of compared notes of what we'd been up to. And we were both doing a lot of windsurfing. And he had a place on Kauai. And I went, I'll come visit. I went and started hanging out with him. And we just hit it off and just started doing a lot of stuff together. And, in the next few years kind of became inseparable. And bought land on Maui, and we just did channel crossings and surfed and just did a lot of stuff together.
Yeah, it was a hell of a relationship you guys had there. And what I was trying to get my head around as well, you guys had been sort of trying to access bigger waves. Where was the point where you got to the point where you were like, right, we can just go out to Piahi now and surf or get towed in on the rib, on the inflatable? Well,
it was a progression. So we started at backyards, and the reason we were on the second reef, Derek Dorner, and Laird and I had been windsurfing these outer reefs and realizing the potential of the waves out there, because from shore you couldn't really tell how good or rideable they were. But when we were out there on our windsurfers, we went, wow, these waves are really good. And in the meantime, I had the Zodiac, and we towed around in small days and just did the freeboarding behind, the boat. And so one day we decided, well, what if we took my boat out here and tried to tow onto these waves? So we did that and did it, in 12 to 15 foot surf, not huge surf. Then we had one day that got really big. There was a freakish direction, kind of northeast swell. And we got like 25 foot outside Laniakea, which was just this wave that's very rare. I haven't seen it break like that since. Wow. And just, we just kept upping our game. And then our friends on Maui, Mike Waltz and Mark Angulo and Dave Kalama, the windsurfer guys that we windsurfed a lot with, said, hey, well, you guys were towing over there. We were windsurfing at this place, Piahi, and it might be really good for your towing technique. So at that point, we had my Zodiac, and Laird had just gotten a wave runner. He worked on the movie Endless Summer 2, and at the end for payment, he said, why don't you guys give me one of these wave runners? So we had the Zodiac and the Wave Runner, and then we were on Oahu, and we went, well, we want to get them to Maui, but we didn't have trailers. We stuffed the boat and the ski in the back of my truck, in the back of trucks, and would drive them and hand launch them and launch them off the beach. And
you launched from the beach? Wow.
Yeah, everything was beach launch. And so we thought, well, let's just drive them over to Maui. And so we waited for a Kona Windstorm, which is the opposite of the normal wind that's actually pushing from Oahu towards Maui. And it's stormy conditions, but it was like 15 to 25 to 35 knot gusts pushing us right to Maui. So we launched from Hawaii Kai, and Mike Waltz and with me and the Zodiac and Laird on the Wave Runner, and we drove them like 90 something miles to Oahu. To Maui. And then once we had them on Maui, then we went and started experimenting at Piahi and realized that the first day it wasn't massive out there, but it was big, and we just went, wow, this wave is really good. This is really good. I wonder how big it could handle. What if we got a really big swell? We had no idea that, we're come to find out it could handle as big as Mother Nature could throw at it with perfection.
What sort of size does it start to feel the bottom at then, Piahi? You were talking about surfing it small to start with.
You can ride it when it's like 12 feet or maybe 12 to 15. It starts to break, but then it really at 20 and 25, it's hitting. It turns into a much more serious wave. Yeah. And, then at 50 feet, it's the right and left are just absolutely amazing. And I think I was out there when Pete Cabrina got, I think it was a 71 foot, measurement on a left. And, it was just a perfect wave. And there's probably been 80 foot face waves ridden out there. And it's amazing. There's no other wave like it in the world.
Yeah, I remember I wore out my VHS of a movie. I think the movie was called Strapped.
Strapped,
Yeah, and I think that must have been. We're probably talking kind of like mid, even maybe pushing on towards late 90s by then.
Yeah,
would we have been? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how did anyone first come to know that Piahi was there then? Because it's quite a remote spot, isn't it? Was that just through sort of long distance windsurfing, or had it been on people's radar as a place where waves broke?
It wasn't on too many people's radar. I'm hearing different stories of guys that had surfed it and seen it first. So I don't know factually exactly how it unfolded, but it was pretty well kept secret. The guys that did know about it weren't really telling anybody, and for the first couple years we were riding it. Nothing really came out to the media, and then Eric Gator was still photographer. Maui guy was shooting from the hill. Dave Nash, a video guy, was shooting the video. So once pictures and videos started coming out, and one of the first videos was I think it was Wake Up Call, about put out by the strap guys, trying to push the idea of foot straps on surfboards, really. But what it ended up doing was selling the idea of this wave that we're riding. And pretty soon, each year more and more guys were coming, and before long it became the most crowded lineup in the world.
Retailer in surf, skate or e-bikes? Contact Full Charge, suppliers of Venom and Studio surfboards, Pro Light leashes, Sniper bodyboards, Churchill swim fins, Ari Nui Seps, Voltaway e-bikes, plus many more. We can also help you advertise your business by designing your own branded embroidered changing robes and towels. For more, contact fullchargerhino@gmail.com.
But going back to that, for you, Buzzy, your sort of first session at Piahi, like, how are you? I'm just trying to work out in my mind. Like, I guess you've obviously surfed a lot of big waves beforehand. Like, were you prepared? How did you prepare? Were you sort of likening Piahi to, say, somewhere like Waimea or Big Sunset? Or were you just going hell for leather? It's just like, I just want to get out there, and it would just want to go and surf the biggest wave.
Well, it was the first few times it was big, but it wasn't huge. And then we got more and more comfortable out there with our technique. And then as it got bigger and bigger, it was like we could handle it. But I've said this in other interviews. It's like there's all this talk of like the 100-foot wave. Yeah. And the guys want the bigger. Laird wanted the biggest ones that come. And my friend Archie that I told, he always just wanted the biggest one. And I always said, if a 100-foot wave comes, I don't want it. I've never had a desire. if the 100-foot shows, just tow me over there, because I'm not letting go of the rope. I'm not going on it. I don't want a 100-foot wave. It's not, the biggest wave I think I've ridden had a 60-foot face. And for me, that was plenty. And I felt like if I had gone down on that wave, I probably would have not survived. Back then too, I didn't have inflation. I had this little cheesy thin flotation vest, and I don't do breath hold training or any of that. That thing probably would have killed me. So the last thing I wanted was a bigger one, like a 100-footer. That's no thanks. The other guys can have that.
We spoke earlier this year to one of the Irish big wave surfers, Al Meany, and he was saying about how he looks back at the equipment that he was first using, and that it gives him chills to think about what could have actually happened to him at a few of those spots out on that west coast of Ireland. Yeah. And so you guys were starting, if you look at the equipment used nowadays and all the effort put into safety, but you guys started with a Zodiac. So do you ever look back and think like, whoa, stuff could have gone really wrong there?
Yeah, for sure. And I had some waves that January 28th, 1998, that was the day I rode my biggest wave. And my partner at the time, Victor Lopez, tried to tow me on this one that was probably a 60-footer, but it had the West Bowl that kind of hooks on the end. And I decided that the last second I didn't want that one. And so as he thought he was flinging me in, I just held on. And then he headed over to the channel. He looked back. I was still there.
And you're still there.
And that wave just absolutely like pinched and closed out. So I would have either had to pull in or straighten out, and either option was not pretty.
Wow.
Probably, I don't know if I would have survived that one if I'd pulled into that thing. It was just the meanest, toughest one on the corner. No inflation, So I feel like I'm lucky to be here.
Yeah. Did you always manage to make those good decisions, or did you ever actually get into trouble with it at all?
Oh, you learn to make those good decisions by getting into trouble. That's how you learn. But then there's instincts, and sometimes you just got to choose the right thing. I had a friend that had a helicopter permit and wanted to pick me up and fly. And I said, helicopter permit? No, I don't think so. And that day he went and crashed and died. So it was just sometimes these instincts, you're just decisions you make can change your life.
Wow. They're for a reason. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is a heavy story, yeah.
Yeah.
And Buzzy, whilst all this crazy stuff, this pioneering tow surfing was going on, you managed a very successful and lucrative modelling career with the likes of Ralph Lauren, Levi's, amongst others. So, was that a perfect job because of, the way the seasons go in the modelling and all the clothing? And was it, quite a challenge to keep, surf fit while you were going to all these shoots? And obviously with the modelling industry, I don't know whether you got involved heavily with it, but there's obviously a big party scene going on there as well. How did it all work out for you?
Well, my modeling was, although I did a lot of work, I mean, most models would say live in New York and do go-sees and try to get jobs all the time. And sometimes they'd go on location. But I just, I flew in, I got the polo shoots. I would fly directly to location. So we shot in London, we shot in Barbados, we shot Hawaii, we shot in different places. So I would go in the week, it'd be like a week shoot, and then I'd be done, and then I'd be home. So it wasn't taking up all my time. So I could surf my brains out and then go work for a week and then be set for, a while. So it worked out. And then I got other jobs, but I never lived in LA or New York and modeled full time. I just would get jobs. And once I started doing the polo stuff, other companies would go, we want him. And they just fly me in and I'd do their job and come home. So I didn't do the grind of the go-sees and live in the city to be a model.
You had the best parts of that job then.
Yeah.
For sure.
So this would have involved going in and out of Europe a fair few times, and there's one great story that my dad was reminding me about that you and Laird, when you were over on this side of the Atlantic, because he was doing the modelling work as well. And I think that this one is actually, you mentioned Endless Summer 2 earlier. I think Laird actually tells this story briefly to Jerry Lopez, Pat O'Connell and Wingnut in Endless Summer 2 when they're in G-Land. And he says that you and he decided to paddleboard from Corsica in Italy, but that you got the distances wrong. So anyone who remembers Endless Summer 2 will remember Laird telling that story, but you were actually with him. And so what exactly happened there?
Well, that was 2 weeks after we paddled the English Channel. And we did that. And then Laird said, well, I've windsurfed in the Mediterranean and Corsica, and I think we should go paddle from Corsica to Elba. And so we got the chart out. It said 37, but it didn't say what. And so we thought, well, it's Europe. Everything's in kilometers, so it must be 37 kilometers.
Right.
Which is only 24 miles. So that's not that big a deal, but it looked pretty far on the map. And so we went and did that. And we had a helicopter filming us. We said, okay, we're going to be there in 3.5, 4 hours. This will be an easy day after the English Channel. There's no current. There's no predators. We're just in the Mediterranean calm sea. And And so about 4 hours in, we saw the helicopter go back past on their way back to Corsica, and Elba still looked really freaking far away. And so,
Oh, God.
So you're like, lad, was that actually kilometers?
so we arrived at dark,
Wow.
9-hour paddle. And we went up and found this little restaurant, and we started talking to the owner of the restaurant, and he said that's 37 nautical miles, which is 44 statute miles. So it was basically double the distance that we expected, and was one heck of a paddle. Yeah, there's some pictures in the book about that. And then so we said to the guy, so where's the ferry? We want to catch the ferry back to Corsica, in the morning. He goes, well, it's that was my birthday, September 25th. He goes, the season ended 2 weeks ago. We go, okay, so where's the airport? We'll catch a little flight back. He goes, well, the airport's closed too. We go, we're looking back across the channel going, frick, do we really got to paddle back?
Another 9 hours.
And he said, well, you've got to take we had to catch a bus to the ferry station and a ferry to mainland Italy. And then from mainland Italy, we had to get to Livorno. So we had to catch a ferry to a bus to Livorno to catch the ferry back to Corsica. It took 2 days.
And this is with the
I had
paddle
was
boards, yeah?
with our paddle boards, no clothes. I had a credit card, so I was going to buy shoes, and I went in this Italian store, and they were like $200 a pair. I was going to have to buy 202 pairs. I went, no way, sorry, there we didn't get the shoes. I bought a sweatshirt, but I mean, money was tight. We were just on our own. It was, it was like things. We didn't just buy everything we needed. We were on a shoestring of a budget. So
Wow.
we finally made it back and got back to our car and got back to France.
Wow, that's an incredible. Buzzy, you talk like you do these incredible challenges that you've taken on in the ocean, and I was interested to know whether you know like with an endurance challenge like that, what sort of training was involved, and the like actually with like big wave surfing, because you mentioned earlier that holding your breath perhaps wasn't your strong point. Did you ever sort of do any breath hold training like deep sea what's it called, freediving or anything like that, just to sort of help you out with holding your breath?
No, I never did. We went in the days when we were towing. We'd work out on the beach and different pull-ups, and we had our training regime, but we didn't. There was no classes that I had ever heard of for breath holding, or I just had no idea. I never did, and I wasn't very good at it, but I never did anything to get it better. Didn't really know there was options to really work on that.
Yeah.
Had I known, I would have, but I didn't even know that was an option.
That was probably a good thing, because you were just confident in your body in itself as it was.
Yeah. And, guys are like, oh, well, get the spare air so you can, if you're underwater, you can just, you're getting beat. You're going to stick this mouthpiece in, exhale your last breath, and hope it works. That never seemed like a good option to me.
No.
And you mentioned crossing the English Channel. So was that before the
That was
journey from Corsica?
2 weeks before the Corsica.
And so you guys didn't necessarily learn then, because didn't you guys run into a bit of trouble crossing the English Channel as well, and sort of
trouble,
get the other side and have a
define trouble? You mean like freighters? And
all right, okay. I mean adventure.
And hypothermia. There was a few obstacles, but.
Yeah, and nowadays you've got to be careful when you arrive at the English Channel that you've got all your papers in order nowadays, because there's a big clampdown on on crossing the English Channel. What did you?
That's
when
probably
you
because of us.
Yeah. Did anyone ask you where you'd come from when you arrived?
Well,
there's these two models walking up the beach.
When we got to Dover. And they took one look in my eyes and realized I was hypothermic, so they took us to the hospital. And while in the hospital warming up, some immigration lady came and wrote out a piece of paper for us to show when we got back to France, mode of entry into England, surfboard.
And so were these paddle boards, as in that you know, prone paddle boards, or we're not talking SUPs prone at this stage yet then?
No, that didn't happen. Yeah. Laird hadn't created that yet.
Yeah, so it
12 foot prone paddle boards that we used for races.
And then its Laird is largely behind the advent of the SUP as well then. Well,
he made it a sport. I mean, guys had stood on a board and paddled with the paddle. That there's maybe a handful of guys that had done that in Waikiki, but it wasn't really a sport. Like the Choi brothers would put a camera around their neck and they use a canoe paddle on a tandem board and paddle out and take pictures of the tourists. And then this one other guy was riding some waves, and but it wasn't really a sport. And then Laird pretty much single-handedly turned it into a sport with wave and race applications that spread all over the world.
Are you an advocate of SUP?
You know, I thought it was like, I saw Laird doing it, and what's he up to now? At that point, he and I had falling out. That looks kooky, or you got to be kidding. You know, and then one day I was down at Maliko, and Laird goes, "Here, give it a try." So I jumped on one of his boards and did a run with him, and then I went, "Wow, this is pretty cool." So I was, but he'd already been at it for several months before I jumped in, and then actually my oldest son ended up being on the Stand Up World Tour for years, which is a wave and race tour around the world.
Yeah, my dad was at Malibu. There was a big south swell, and I remember talking to him. I actually was lucky enough to be in Australia for the same swell. I surfed at Coolangatta, and then there was a huge south swell, and Laird surfed Malibu, like one of the biggest days in recent memory of Malibu. And am I exaggerating this, or didn't he actually shoot the pier? Apparently,
he did. Him and Alan Sarlo. Alan Sarlo was surfing, Laird stand up, and they both shot the pier several times. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, my dad was there that day. Yeah, I didn't realize Alan Sarlo was with you. Yeah, Alan Sarlo is like the guy that you've got to be nice to if you want to
catch a wave in the Malibu. If you want to catch a wave at Malibu.
Yeah. In fact, no. I have actually seen footage of Sarlo on an SUP there. Yeah, and he's
but that day he was surfing. Alan was surfing, and Laird was stand up.
Was on the stand up. Wow.
Yeah. Cool. And talking about sort of extracurricular activities, there's obviously we've seen the event of foiling at the moment coming through. A lot of guys are getting really into that, the likes of Kai Lenny and the such. What are your thoughts on that? Have you got involved with that sport at all?
Oh, that's crazy.
It is. It didn't I see a picture?
Actually, I've just this last week I've been becoming a wing foiler. So I got a wing and my foil. I had a stand-up foil board. I do toe-in foiling, but now I'm putting the wing with it, and it's just absolutely amazing. You get that wing powered, and you're up on the foil, and it's just like the future. It's the future. It's amazing.
But by the wing, do you mean a device that you wear?
No, the wing is like it's basically like a kite that you hold. There's handles on it. So it's got an inflated lead edge, and then you just hold it in your hands, and that gives you enough power from the wind to get up on the foil, and away you go. And
then this is about, sort of going on like a kind of coastal journey at this, rather than actually going into a lineup and
you can go into a lineup and tack up and come through and ride the waves. There's different spots out here where there aren't very many people. You can do that. You can do a coast run where you just head off all the way down the coast, just powering yourself. It's amazing that a lot of guys have been kite wing foiling, and now the wing foil is taking over, and it's you'll have to look it up and see what I'm talking about, but it's absolutely amazing, and it's something I plan to spend a lot of time doing in the future.
Wow, yeah, because we see a fair bit of foil boarding around here where we are, and but I've not yet seen anyone doing that. That sounds incredible.
It's amazing. They go fast. The guys, some of the kids on Maui, they're doing double flips now. So
Really?
they just
Wow.
pop and it's a new sport. We're on the leading edge of it, but it's catching on. It's applications, and anywhere there's wind, it takes less wind than windsurfing.
Yeah.
And so it's fun in flat water, but it gets more fun in rough water and waves and all conditions. So it's the future of sport, of water sports right now.
Do you still spend much time windsurfing, or is wing foiling now sort of that's it? Is it is going to take over windsurfing completely?
Well, I hadn't been windsurfing much, and then being back here on the North Shore, my last years on Maui, I was kind of over windsurfing and did more downwind stand-up paddling. And then I got here, and I've been watching the days, and I got some windsurf gear out and started windsurfing backyards again. But upwind, I would see the wing foilers, and they just were the wind at backyards tends to be very gusty and holy. It'll be from 3 knots to 20 knots, 3 to 20. It's so gusty and tricky. And I kept looking up at the wingers, and I went, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's just it's way more fun than the windsurfing.
And so we come up to nowadays then. So living on the North Shore again. So you lived in Maui for a long time. You've moved back to the North Shore.
Yeah.
Is that with any kind of lifestyle change you were looking to make to come back to the North Shore?
I moved to Maui primarily, with Laird to windsurf, and we did a lot of windsurfing, and that led to other stuff. But I kind of, as I got over the windsurfing, I was liking Maui, but then I ended up getting divorced, and I came back to the North Shore to do a talk story at Turtle Bay, and my oldest son was competing in a stand-up race the next day at Turtle Bay. And I met this lady, and I ended up hanging out with her. And then I started going back to Maui less and less.
Commuting, right? Okay.
And
so
less,
it's a kind
and then I just ended up organically here back on the North Shore. It wasn't like, I'm going to move there. It just sort of happened.
Yeah.
But I'm real happy being back here on the North Shore.
And just before we close out here then, Buzzy, can I just ask a bit about your lifestyle now on the North Shore then? Because the North Shore is a very seasonal place, isn't it? There's not a lot of surf there in summertime, and then suddenly everything kind of changes. So walk us through how you'd kind of keep active as a waterman during the various seasons in the North Shore.
Well, in the summer, it's there's not much surf out here, although the last 2 winters we kept getting swells into the middle of summer out here. It was amazing. I mean, it wasn't great surf, but it'd be like 2 to 4, 3 to 5, 2 to 4. So I kept getting waves. And then the wind, you got the wind for foiling all the time. Yeah. And if there's a big swell in town, I'll drive into town and go surf the South Shore. Right. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometimes. And then, during the summer, like I went a month for my book tour this summer. And, some summers I'll take a surf trip somewhere. Yeah. And so, the summer goes by pretty quick. And in past years, I would spend the summer training for paddle racing and doing channel crossings and stuff. I'm not racing or doing much stand-up anymore. So I've just gotten back into my own fitness routine where I will go and paddle some. I swim some. I go to Waimea. I work out. So I'm trying to stay in top shape. And I'm going to be 65 in a week, and I've got a goal now to be still surfing, Sunset Waimea at 65. So we'll see what happens this winter.
Yeah, well, I think that's an amazing goal, and I got to say, Rhino and I can see you here. You look absolutely fighting sharp, Buzzy. So you're doing a real good job. I hope that I'm somewhere close to that when I'm nearing 65. Talking about conventional surfing, and I don't even kind of know what exactly we call it now. We call it surfing, because we've been talking about so many different disciplines. What would your quiver look like at the moment then, as a surfer, when you're just doing conventional paddling and pop up?
I've got stand up boards, all sizes. I've got short boards from 6.0 to 8.4.
Right.
I'm just getting a new 9.4 for Sunset this year.
Oh, nice.
I got probably ride my 9.4 if I ride Waimea again.
So that's going to be like a classic. They used to call them the Rhino Chaser.
Yeah, that's. I've got a 10.2 Dick Brewer that I busted out last year and had all my kids ride, and we all surfed Waimea and rode that board. And then I just got a new 9.4 Eric Arakawa coming hopefully next week. And so I've got a full quiver of short boards, and I'm here and I surf wherever, covering the whole coast. I don't surf Pipeline as much as I'd like to. It's just the crowd is such a frenzy out there. But if you go to other places, you can still find plenty of surf and get some rides without a massive crowd. There's no such thing as uncrowded. It's just a milder crowd.
Yeah. Well, we do get uncrowded here, Buzzy, but it's freezing, it's crowded in the whenever anywhere is particularly good, or when or in the summer it's good, but it's freezing and the waves are small. But if you are ever over on these shores, Buzzy, and you want us to fix you up with a chance to give a talk about the book or anything, or just to go for a surf, or we got a little channel here. You can paddle over to England from here.
They'll welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, and we've also got the world's biggest tidal range as well. So a few guys have done that paddle over to England, and they have to be you have to sort of time it really well.
Right,
to sort of go, you've got to go out at the tide for 3 hours and then get drawn back in for another 3 hours. So anyway, there's an offer there, open-ended offer of the red carpet treatment if you're ever in Wales, Buzzy.
Okay. So tell everybody they can follow my Instagram. I'm trying to boost up my Instagram. I've been I posted a lot of stuff from my book tour. I don't know if you've seen my Instagram, but I try to make it pretty entertaining.
You'll have Crest and both of our presenters following you from now on, and our listeners will be picking you up when this one comes out. Yeah, so
cool.
We'll do that for sure. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today, Buzzy, on Crest in partnership with Elusive. You've been an inspiration to a generation of surfers, and when I look at where the sport is now, I think that we've got to give you credit for the role that you've played in bringing that about.
Oh, thank you. My motto is from a Tom Petty song: "Never slow down, you'll never grow old."
Amazing.
And Buzzy, I would also like to say a massive thanks for coming on to Crest today and sharing with us your incredible life stories. And Buzzy, I'm really looking forward to, as we just spoke about, getting stuck into reading your book, actually, and Making Waves, it's called. And on that subject, what's the website? Where can we find Making Waves from?
Well, the only place you can get it is on my website, buzzykerbox.com, but I can't. Okay. It's like it costs more to ship it to you guys than the cost of the book. Unfortunately, I don't have a distributor over there at the moment. It's something I'd like to do in the future. Well,
if any are listening, you know how to get in touch.
Yeah. Send me a message on buzzykerbox.com, and I'll see about trying to get some books over there.
Awesome.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you heard at the start, we're nearing the end of season 2 of Crest in partnership with Elusive. The success of the season has been in no small part to the listeners who've commented and fed back to us on the episodes and discussions we've had. So a reminder of how to do this: you can email us at castcrest@gmail.com, or you can comment on either our Instagram or Twitter feeds. Our shows are all available on YouTube, as well as the main podcast apps, Apple, Spotify and Google. If you like what you hear, please do leave a review to that effect.
So it's a month before we meet our final guest of 2021 after Buzzy, and what a guest that will be. A fella from the Gower to finish again, Rhino. Not PJ this time, but somebody who does know PJ well, who's usually behind a lens and who's discovered more surf spots on UK shores than God himself. Any guesses?
Who could that be, Tom?
Who indeed. If you haven't figured it out, we'll be beginning the Instagram hype soon enough. Yes, the mysterious character of whom we speak is indeed coming on Crest in partnership with Elusive. You can't wait. We can't wait. Even he can't wait, apparently.
I can't
Before
wait
that
either.
finale, though. And Buzzy can't
Can
wait.
you tell me? I can't wait.
All right, okay. We will as soon as we're off air here now, Buzzy. We'll tell you who this guy is. You probably he'll be a big fan of yours, actually. Yeah. So before that finale, we're going to do something a little bit different and have a collaboration episode as our penultimate of the season with another one of the UK's top surf podcasts, The Grumpy Surfer. Ads Lyson and myself will be joined by the Pagans, i.e. Logan and Pat. So that's Wales's two WQS hopes, all being well, to have a chat about the international competitive season and to break down the WSL finals and upcoming Challenger Series events. That one will be available on both ours and the Grumpy Surfers platforms, so keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, hope you're getting some autumn swell. See you in the water, hopefully. Gwelwch chi yn y môr gobeithio.
Aloha from Maui. North Shore.
Cheers, Buzzy.
Thank you, Buzzy.
You.
Cool.
Right on.
See you.
See you guys. That was fun.